Thom Hartmann here on the news. You need to know this. Last night, Republicans in the U.S. Senate stayed up all night to delay a vote on a federal appeals court judge. The vote to approve Judge Nina Pillard happened at 1 a.m., and several other nominations will be considered before the upper chamber leaves for vacation next week. Republicans say that they will delay every vote as long as possible to punish Democrats for the so-called nuclear option, which prevented the filibuster from being used to block certain federal appointments. Because they can no longer completely block the president's appointees for federal courts and agencies, Republicans are determined to use up to 30 hours of debate for each nominee to slow down the process. Just to put this in perspective, the Senate Republicans did not force all-night debates when considering immigration bills or food stamp cuts or many other important pieces of legislation. But they think blocking the president's choice for an appeals court is worth holding up the entire legislative process. This Congress is the least productive in history because of obstructionist tactics like this, which are more about childish vendettas than about doing the people's business. We elected this president, and it's his job to appoint qualified people to courts and federal agencies. It's the Senate's job to approve or deny those nominees based on their qualifications, and then get to work on all the other pressing issues our nation faces. If Republicans in the Senate want to spend all night debating an issue, why don't they make it one that Americans actually care about? Otherwise, they're simply wasting our time and our taxpayer dollars to play politics. In screwed news, America's pensions are under attack. Politicians, corporations, even our courts are chipping away at retirement benefits and promised health care that workers paid into throughout their careers. For decades, cities, states, and large corporations have skipped out on making payments to employee pension plans and looted pension funds to shore up budgets or pad their balance sheets. And the courts have gone along with all of it by allowing companies, and now cities like Detroit, to declare bankruptcy to screw their workers. Karen Friedman of the Pension Rights Center said, "The assault on retirees is greater now than at any other time. We're seeing it in Detroit. We're seeing it in states that are trying to get rid of good pension plans. We're seeing it in major corporations that are transferring pensions to insurance companies." She said, "We're even seeing it in Congress, where members are being heavily lobbied to introduce legislation that would allow multi-employer plans to cut retirement pensions." The attack on workers has left wages stagnant and union membership declining, so now they're going after the only thing we have left, our retirement. We simply can't let that happen. In the best of the rest of the news, millennials could be the next great generation. According to a new Pew Research study, our nation's youngest voters have progressive views on social issues, immigration policy, and even believe that the government should do more to solve our problems. This is a direct contrast with their older, whiter voters who tend to be more conservative and who believe the government is already too involved in things they believe should be left to the private sector. The millennial generation may just be the generation that helps us usher in a New Deal. And they're the reason why Republicans have gone to great lengths to keep young people from voting. From closing voting precincts at colleges to making college ID an unacceptable form of identification, the GOP keeps coming up with new ways to keep millennials away from the polls. They can't do it forever, and eventually these young voters are going to get their say. When they do, our country may just find its way back to a government that works for the people and not the corporations. According to radcast.org, radiation levels are holding steady around our nation today, with only a few areas rising from yesterday's numbers. Near the East Coast, Taylor's South Carolina is sitting at 41 counts per minute, with spikes to 64, and Chicopee, Massachusetts is at 42, with spikes to 66. Midwest is reporting elevated readings, with Colorado Springs hovering at 61, with spikes to 86, and Frederick, Wisconsin at 47, with spikes to 70 counts per minute. Southwest is also reporting some concerning spikes, with Chino Valley, Arizona hovering at 53 with spikes to 77, and Henderson, Nevada at 47 with spikes of 72 counts per minute. The Northwest is slightly calmer, with Vancouver, Washington at 38, spiking to 57, and Seattle at 30 with peaks of 41. Radcast.org reminds us that their alert level is 100 counts per minute, and they're monitoring levels closely to provide us this important information. And finally, after the 2012 elections, the Republican Party's so-called autopsy report showed that they needed to find a way to connect with minorities. Well, one of the best ways to do so may be to actually make sure that there are actual minorities at your minority outreach events. Last week, Senator Rand Paul was asked to speak at the Michigan Republican Party's African American Engagement Office. But as pictures from the event show, pretty much everyone who showed up for the event was white. Even in Detroit, which is roughly 83% African American, it's not that surprising to see Rand Paul have an issue connecting with minorities. After all, he's spoken out against long-term unemployment benefits, even though the African American unemployment rate is substantially higher than white unemployment. He's expressed strong criticism of the 1964 Civil Rights Act. Just a word to the wise. If the Republican Party of Detroit, or any city for that matter, wants to connect with minorities, they may not want to invite a speaker who says private business should be able to discriminate and that employs staffers who nickname themselves the Southern Avenger. And that's the way it is today, Thursday, December 12th, 2013. I'm Thom Hartmann on the news.